Okay, nice to be with you again. Look at this big smile on my face. And the reason for that is because we are starting copyrights, and I love copyrights. So, without further ado, I want to get to the PowerPoint slides. And so to do that, I just want to click here. Oh, whoops. Sorry about that. That's a bear doodle that I had been working on. I didn't really mean to put that up. So let me try this. All right. Um, so hopefully this is working. And so here are some of the topics that are hot in copyright right now. Just to give you a flavor of the breadth of controversies that we're about to be going over, at least some of them. Um, File sharing. Um, the 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 entertainment industry hates it, but can you legally do it? Are the platforms lawful? We'll look at what happened to Napster and the newer breeds of services. What about Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the like? Do they have any legal responsibility when people post or upload copyrighted stuff without permission? What are people even allowed to alter, repost, or share on these sites? We all do it, so should we be afraid? What if you embed someone else's photograph from their site into yours? Is that okay? Then there is the concept of fair use, which potentially touches almost everything we do these days. We will spend a lot of time evaluating how it relates to new digital technologies and services. Just think about DVRs or Google image search, for example. We will see how fair use applies to many of the things we do with digital works, such as remixing audio and video content. Can you resell digital music? Some of you may have lots of old iTunes music that you bought in the past but don't want anymore. Maybe your tastes change or you decided to get Spotify. Can you resell those old tracks? And speaking of services like Spotify, do they have to pay composers or musicians to stream music? And on and on. I even put the application of copyrights to computer programs on here. You know, this topic was once front and center, but it dropped off the radar for quite some time until the recent dispute between Oracle and Google after Google took some of Oracle's Java code to develop its Android operating system. Anyway, you get the idea. There are a whole bunch of interesting things going on that involve copyrights. I don't know which ones we'll actually get to cover. Certainly not all of them. We'll just have to play it by ear as current events unfold. I want to spend a moment to consider the purposes and history of copyrights because the role of copyrights is being severely taxed by rapid changes in technologies and social norms. To begin, I want you to turn back briefly and recall that one overriding goal of certain intellectual property systems, such as patents and copyrights, is to provide incentives and rewards to those engaged in creativity. Patents focus on inventions like machines, processes, and systems, while copyrights are more concerned with artistic expressions. And so there's no question that copyrights have a lot to do with rewarding songwriters for the music they compose, authors for the stories that they write, and artists for the images that they paint. We call these individuals the content providers. Okay, I think we all can agree that copyrights are intended to make sure that content providers are rewarded for their creative achievements. But copyrights are not solely about content providers. There are other people who have a stake in creative materials who look to copyrights to compensate them for producing and distributing those items to you, to the public. I want you to go back, way back, to a time before Kindles, when we actually read books that were printed on paper and had bindings and all. Here's one I took off my bookshelf in case you haven't seen one of these before, and it's got paper and things like that in it. So, a lot goes into getting the book into my hands and ultimately onto my bookshelf. So, of course, there's the author here, Michael Connelly, who's the content provider, who writes the words. And so he should be rewarded for putting his time and energy into making those original expressions in this book, Echo Park. So I understand this as the author of a textbook in the field. But I also know that others were involved in the enterprise and they ultimately require compensation for their labors as well. For instance, in my case, I needed a textbook publisher who paid for editors and proofreaders. And, they had these big machines to print tons of copies. And then they paid for the binding and they did the marketing. And finally, beyond that, they covered the shipping costs to send the books to students at universities. And if you think about it, the publisher's expenses in many ways probably far exceeded the investment that I put into the book, at least in terms of the money they had to put down. So I just don't want you to forget their role in getting those printed words to you. But here's the rub. Many of these books don't sell all that well. The publisher took a risk by investing in them, but they just don't pay off. Fortunately, a few do hit pay dirt. Thank goodness for Harry Potter. Indeed, the returns from Harry Potter can pay for a lot of those failures and make everything work out okay in the end. But now, think what might happen to the publisher in a world without copyright. Here, they are taking all these risks by investing substantial resources in all these books, most of which become busts. But then there's Harry Potter. Everybody wants it. It's a sure bet winner. At this point, others could sell it without taking any risk at all. Everybody likes it. So without copyrights, they would just copy it with their big machines and distribute it. And they will undersell the original publisher because they don't have all those losers to finance. They can just pick off the winners. And at the end of the day, even Harry Potter doesn't pay off for the publisher. So thank goodness for copyright. Because with copyright, the copyright owners can sue those unscrupulous SOBs for copying, distributing Harry Potter. And they're easy to find because they still need their own big printing machines and binding equipment to efficiently make their versions. And if the publisher can shut down those printing presses, then it can choke off the supply of the infringing Harry Potter books. Thus, copyrights work pretty well in the print world. Authors get paid enough, publishers and distributors receive sufficient compensation, and the copyright owners can shut down infringers in a reasonable fashion. Now I want you to think how the dynamics change in a digital world. First of all, the need to pay for publishers and distributors has gone down. Way down. In fact, I'm going to tell you that if I were ever to write another book, I would not even consider using a publisher. I would simply write the content myself, make it look really professional with Microsoft Word, and distribute it digitally over the internet. I don't need paper. I don't need printing presses. I don't need trucks. I don't need any of that really expensive stuff. So the importance of copyright to pay for all these enormous expenses really diminishes. All that copyright really must do is compensate me adequately for my content and some incidentals like marketing. And the grand scheme of things, this is pretty minimal. In fact, many people would argue that authors don't need copyright at all. Rather, they can post their work for free and then make money in other ways, such as by going on the live lecture circuit, giving seminars, or selling merchandise. The same is true of other kinds of artists, such as musicians, who can make money on the concert circuit. Okay, this is an extreme view, that we don't need copyright at all, but there are elements of truth in there worth considering. Okay, that's part of the equation. It's now easier and less expensive to publish and distribute content. The other side of the coin, though, is that piracy is easier than ever before. I imagine many of you often make illegal copies. Perhaps you did so today. And one reason you probably do it, even when you know you are breaking the law, is because who's going to catch you? You don't need a big printing press to do it economically anymore. If the material is in print, all you need is a scanner and an internet connection, and bang, you can send it to your friends. And they can send it to their friends, and so on, until everybody's got it. And they all got it for free. So, I'm definitely not recommending this, because it's illegal and immoral. But I always kind of wonder why students in, like, a science course with one of those extremely expensive $200 hardback textbooks don't simply purchase one, split up the duties of scanning chapters, and then distribute those files to each other. That would certainly reduce the price of the book for all participants in the scheme. And really, what are the odds that the professor would even know that it is happening or catch you doing it? This is the incredible problem with copyrights in digital environments. Not only is copying extraordinarily cheap and easy, but we can all do it right at our desktops. That's so different than in the analog or paper world. There, the piracy takes place at a central location with expensive machinery. The pirates are relatively easy to find, and when you shut them down, you shut down the source of the problem. Also, the operators usually have money to compensate you for your losses. With digital technologies, the piracy is decentralized all over the place among the end users. Each one is difficult to locate, and if you catch one, you're not going to stop anyone else. And you may find that this individual can't pay for even what he's done. That's why he took it. The bottom line is that enforcement may be extremely difficult. There are some distinct reactions to all of this. One camp says, look, we don't really need copyright incentives all that much to compensate authors for their works anymore. And enforcement is so difficult that this whole copyright thing no longer makes any sense. It's time to end it. But publishers, recording companies, and others often don't buy into this. They believe that copyrights are still important, and what is needed is to make people have more respect for them. So they want to make the laws stronger And more importantly, let you know that if you're caught, oh, will you ever regret it? If I catch you copying my textbook, you will owe me every dollar you ever make for the rest of your life. Um, and you're going to go to jail for like 300 years. So go ahead, make my day. So one camp wants to get rid of copyright. The other one wants to strengthen it. What I believe we need to do is to find the appropriate middle ground, the reasonable center, so to speak. We have to evaluate the technologies and then reform copyright so that it provides sufficient compensation to participants while not overreaching and stifling the creative potential of others. Okay, enough theory and philosophy. Let's get down to it. Here's what copyright protects. The statute states that copyright protects original works of authorship fixed in any tangible medium of expression. Let's start with what the term original means. Your first instinct might be that something is original if it has never been done before. When I was first asked long ago, my first guess was that it was the copyright equivalent to novel and non-obvious in patents. But this is not correct. Rather, original in copyright means it's original to the creator, in the sense that they thought it up independently without having seen or heard it before. Original means I created it out of my own head with my own talents, as opposed to copying it from somewhere else. It's original to me. I added on the slide that original works have to include some minimal degree of personal creativity. I hesitate to even mention that, and we'll see what it means soon. But minimal is really minimal. Basically, if you're trying to protect something that is totally banal and common, you won't be able to demonstrate that you personally thought up anything. Copyrights only cover works of authorship, and the categories they include are probably broader than you first imagined. So let's see. They include literary works, musical compositions and sound recordings, plays, pantomimes, choreography, pictures, illustrations, sculptures, movies, videos, and architecture. Really just about everything that you can think of that involves artistic expression in any kind of format is covered. Even computer programs are included within the concept of literary works. So that gives you an idea about how wide the copyright umbrella extends. The other essential aspect of copyrights is that they cover expressions in a work, but not the ideas that they portray. And we will have to consider this somewhat later, but the distinction of ideas from expressions can be a fine line and lead to significant controversy. Just for a taste of the dilemma, what would you say if I asked you what the idea of Harry Potter is? Is it a story about magic? A story about kids who attend a school of magic? A story about a special boy who fights an evil figure in a school with students involved with magic? You see the dilemma. It can be difficult to determine where the idea stops and the expression begins. But it matters, because another author can copy those elements that are part of the idea and not infringe J.K. Rowling's copyright. So, copyrights protect the expressions in a work, but not the ideas. Copyrights also do not protect processes, systems, discoveries, and methods of operation, among other kinds of utilitarian features of a work. Much of this is to separate the patent realm from copyrights. Patents are for useful inventions, while copyrights are about the expressive arts like books, videos, and music. Often, the differences are easy to decipher, but sometimes you run into things where the realms overlap, like sculptures that serve as lamp bases. Perhaps the most contentious are computer programs, because on the one hand, they allow computers to operate, but on the other, they have written instructions that can be read by programmers. uh, okay, you know, here I am in the middle of filming this video, and I just remembered that I really have to pick up something at the drugstore, like about an hour ago. So I'm gonna pause this video right now, and I imagine I should just pop back on after I complete my errand. So I'll be back in a second. Ta-da! And here I am. Wow, the line at CVS was enormous. I have no idea why. Um, so while I was waiting, and I probably shouldn't even bring this up, but it just made me so mad. Anyway, while I was waiting, I went to the greeting card section and I saw something there that just incensed me. I got so angry, I actually took a picture of it. So I created this cute little bear a while back. Oh yeah, I showed you by mistake at the start of this video. Well, I actually drew it about a year ago during a live Zoom session. Anyway, in the card section at CVS, whoops, I, there it is. I saw this card there. Um, and I look at it and I go, wait a minute, hey, that's my bear. How did somebody see my doodle and make a card out of it? Who would do that? So I turned it over to see if there was more information, and it said the artist was Don Buford. Don Buford. Buford. Wait, I remember that name. He was a student of mine. He must have seen my bear, um, used it to create this thing, and now he's making money off it. Look how similar this is. I just can't believe anyone would be such an unethical. Well, you know what I mean. So I looked up Don's phone number on Polyprofile, and I gave him a call. Thank goodness for cell phones because I got him on the first try. So I just laid into him. I told him I couldn't believe he would do this, especially to a guy he knows is a copyright attorney. I said, you gotta take those cards off the shelves now. I also puffed up and said, you know what? I think I'm gonna sue you for copyright infringement. And I'm gonna go for the max, the whole $150,000 shebang, because you're such a terrible person. This Buford, what nerve! You know what he says to me? He says he didn't copy my bear. He claimed he never saw my bear doodle and came up with his drawing on his own. And I'm like, oh, sure you did. Because I have a record of you on my class roster. And it was during the spring quarter 2020. And that was an online course. And, oh, yes, I have a recording of the live Zoom session here where I drew the bear and you were logged in. So don't even go down this road of I never saw yours before because it's a dead end. You're going down, buddy. You saw mine and you copied it. and I'm ready to sue you for the 150K, and you'll have to pay for my lawyer too. Or you know what? I'll just let it go if you remove the cards and pay me 75,000 right now. Then we can avoid the hassle of court. How about that? You know what he says to me? He says, "You're out of your mind, Burgunder. These aren't even close to being the same. How can you claim I copied yours? Gee, yours is a bear and mine is a cat. They're not even the same animal. Don't say that I made a reproduction of your drawing because a cat is not a bear." I tell him, be serious. Anyone that looks at these is going to say that yours has the same look and feel as mine. So your cat bear argument is not going to cut it. So then he speaks up a little louder and he says, "Well, your bear is not all that original." There's my bear. um, he says, "I remember from your class that copyright only protects original works of authorship, and there's nothing original about your bear. It's just a smiley face with ears. Don't tell me that you came up with that smiley face on your own. They're everywhere. Certainly you've seen one, so you didn't create it, and it's not original." I retort, "Don't be so sure. Maybe I have macular degeneration and don't see so clearly." And then he comes back and he says, "Well, I've seen a million of those smiley faces, so maybe I just thought of them when I drew mine." I go, okay. Forget the smiley face for now. But what about the ears that I put on the smiley face? They look so cool. What an amazing decision to do that. That's so creative. And Buford then says, "Lee, have you ever used emojis on your phone?" Well, okay, of course I have. And he says, "Well, open up your emoji keyboard. Do you see those smiley face animals with pointy ears on them?" Guess they're okay. Well, yeah, I do see them. But those are not like my ears. Mine are rounder. That's where my creativity came in, with the rounding of those ears. And then look at the mouth. I added that cute little wiggle in there. You copied that, the cute little wiggle in the middle of the mouth, and the round ears. Sure, your ears there, they're a little higher on the head, but still, what you took of my creativity is surely enough. Okay, you see how this goes. When there are copyright disputes, you have to get into the weeds of evaluating the similarity of the works. Whether the accused person relied on the copyright work to make his, and whether he took enough of the original aspects to infringe. And we will spend some significant time on this topic with lots of actual examples to demonstrate how this evaluation is carried out. But I did want to give you this simple illustration to get you thinking about what original means in copyright. And yes, I agree it was silly, but the lessons are very real. And just to hammer that home for now, take a look at this, which was the subject of a previous copyright dispute. Okay, what I am showing here is a YouTube video depicting a screensaver that became very popular in the early 1990s. I'm going to turn this off a little bit. Anyway, I actually don't know if the sound of the flapping wings is coming through on this video or not. Anyway, you don't really see screensavers anymore because the technology has changed. But back then, an image that remained stationary on a computer monitor for too long might burn in to the screen and cause a permanent ghosted effect. To prevent the issue, a screensaver would kick in with moving image if there was no computer activity for a certain period of time. This screensaver was made by a company called Berkeley Systems, and it was titled After Dark. A few years after Berkeley Systems introduced After Dark, another company named Delrina came up with its own screensaver that poked fun at After Dark. I wish I could show you a video, but I was only able to find this still picture to give you an idea of what appeared on the screen. It had toasters that traveled down information, as with After Dark, but it added Opus the Penguin, a cartoon character from the Bloom County comic strip, who occasionally entered the screen and blasted a toaster with a shotgun and went down. As you can see, there are some differences with the flying formations, depiction of the toasters, and appearances of the wings. The wings even flapped faster and made a different noise. Berkeley Systems sued Delrina, claiming that Delrina's Opus screensaver infringed its copyright in After Dark. So one line of defense raised by Delrina was that its version was a fair use. And we're going to talk about that later. But Delrina also argued that its screensaver did not copy enough copyrightable original expression from After Dark to infringe Berkeley Systems' copyright. Berkeley Systems' response was, "Are you kidding me? Toasters with flapping wings flying down in formation. That is incredibly creative, and you copied the essence of it. You must be nuts, claiming that it's not original and creative." Delrina comes back with, "You think this is so creative, huh? Well, what about this?" This is the album cover to the Jefferson Airplane LP called 30 Seconds Over Wonderland that was released in 1973, 26 years before the introduction of After Dark. And you can see that it has toasters and formation with wings. The argument thus goes, don't tell me that we infringe because a lot of what makes our Opus screensaver look substantially similar to After Dark was something you had obviously seen before in this album cover. And we changed everything else that might be deemed creative, so go away. So, get this. Delrina argues that much of After Dark is not original due to the album cover. And this is when you have to remember that original means original to me. Thus, what would you say about this if you were Berkeley Systems? How do you maintain that your flying toasters are original in light of the Jefferson Airplane album cover? Well, I'm going to leave this for you to ponder, and we will return to it when we address infringement more specifically. So, until next time, take care.